Oh, all right. Yeah, we'll start up.
All
Boop,
right.
boop, boop. This is a test. This is a test which rhymes with best, which is the podcast you're currently listening to. Say some. Alan?
Hello, and welcome to Smackcast.
K Sensei?
Hey.
It's the shortest test ever. And here we are, Smavcasters. This is, gosh, we got to be pushing 60 by now, if not more, episodes of the show. This is Sojido 3 with Sensei K Sakaue. Say hey to
Hey guys.
everybody. So we're, as you know by now, if you've listened to these Sojido series, we're tackling topics. We're cleaning the dojo. We're sweeping the floors and putting the shoes in order and making sure that the lesson plans are all set for the next day, so to speak, and that the credit card numbers are up to date. Now, in all seriousness, we're going to chat about at least a couple of topics. They're going to be somewhat, I don't want to say heavy, but the first one's actually kind of heavy. Now, all three of us are fathers, which is not necessarily a prerequisite to this first topic, but it is. It definitely puts things into perspective sometimes, right? So let's just jump right in. Since we're on the third Sojido here, let's just jump right in. Sensei, what I brought you tonight for our first topic is basically I sent you guys a couple videos, and probably what I'll do is I'll link those videos in the show description. But they're short little videos of some fathers sparring. I don't really know if I'd call it sparring, more like boxing the piss out of their sons. But that's an opinion. So that's what we're here to discuss. The short, one of them's like 2 minutes, one of them's like 1 minute. What did you guys, Sensei, we'll start with you. Just kind of high level, glossy thoughts. What, with what I brought you with this video, what are you thinking so far, surface level?
Oh, as soon as I popped the video up with Alan, we were just kind of discussing. I was like, man, I got some things to talk about this one.
Yeah,
Um, but it's funny though because different cultures have a different way, right?
sure,
Different
sure,
cultures between their fathers and sons have a different way of teaching,
sure,
right? Or
sure,
passing knowledge along, right? So yeah, I was like, hey, I think we need a little bit more context, a little bit, especially that first video you sent
sure,
with
sure. Yeah,
but I think there comes a time, I'll be honest, even with myself, where I'd be like, yeah, I want to take my dad on, right?
okay,
Um, but different to the video, right? Different to the video. My
sure,
dad
sure,
he had already been doing that for years, and I just didn't realize it.
right.
So I never got punished when I was a kid, right? If I got punished, it'd be, hey, Kate, backyard now, right? And it was when I was in my kendo phase, when I was younger, I'd be okay, hey, 100 suburi, right? That means 100 swings, right?
Right, right.
Or it'd be like, when I started my karate training at home, it'd be okay, 500 punches, 500 kicks on each leg, right?
Right.
And then so he actually transitioned my punishment, or into my training, right?
Right, right.
Yeah, so I had a different take on it. The times were actually where like I had a chance to actually go physical, actual kumite style with my father. You know, he'd always have this, and I think I shared this on another podcast before. It's like whenever we squared off, he'd always have this grin on his face, right? And I hated it,
Mm.
you know. And he would always look at me, he's like, okay, what you waiting for, right? And he'd always have this grin on his face, and and that made me so mad that I go charging and I get up off the ground, right?
Yeah,
And then he'd be, come on, let's do it again. And then I'd go charging again, and then I'd be getting off the
sure, sure.
ground again. So, I mean, so I understand it's like, like I think at a certain level, like I haven't done that with my kids yet because I think my kids still have a little bit more, I'd say they need to mature a little bit.
Yeah,
My oldest is 12 now. He's 180 pounds. He's a big boy.
yeah.
He's about 5'7", right?
He's like me. He's like shaped exactly like I am.
Oh man, and and like I said, he's only 12 years old. He's gonna be
Yeah.
bigger than I am. I
Yeah.
was 6 feet 200 when I was in eighth grade. He's only in seventh grade.
Wow.
And so, I mean, so I got to start looking at different ways. And I think that's what happened to my father. I think he was like, man, I got to start looking at different. I can't just give him a spanking. He's bigger than I am now.
Yeah. Low key. I don't even know if I
Yeah.
was 5 feet tall by seventh grade. Continue.
Oh, man,
I'm sorry. Continue.
No, but we don't keep track of that stuff until because like maybe until high school, right? When things start to measure up, right? But yeah, I think my dad realized early on that I wasn't the normal size for a Sakauin.
Sure.
Right? It's like
Sure.
everybody in my family's small. They're like 5'8" and below.
Look, I don't think it's
6 feet.
I don't think it's like super common in your gene pool to be that tall and that. Am I off base with that comment?
No. It's funny because I always joke that I got the recessive gene.
Yeah.
I got the recessive gene in my family pool, right? In my family gene pool.
I'm the second tallest person in my family at 5'7", if that helps. You keep a little perspective on the gene pool there.
Oh man.
No, so my dad was my martial arts teacher for a little bit. Actually, he taught the teenagers more than anything, and the adults. But when I earned my junior black belt, I was put in the adults program, so he became my teacher. And I actually really liked it after that. Actually really liked it for the most part. I didn't really get in a lot of trouble with my dad unless I was like, I had an attitude or something. You know what I mean? So I never really got in physical trouble in the dojo, so to speak. Now, my dad was a different generation. I did get a spanking here and there. I don't hold it against him these days, like different times, right? Different times. And at a certain point, I think what you said a few minutes ago rang true for me, where I looked at him as like the tension started to build in one argument. And I looked at him and I literally said to him, I can beat you up now, right? And I think it was a sobering moment for both of us, because like I never really actually like would ever do that to my dad, first of all.
Yeah.
But second of all, like that moment of like, oh, he's right. For my dad, like, oh crap, he's right. Because he literally like, he was like in my face and then just out of it instantly. Just out of my face instantly, because he was like, you know what? He's right. So that being said, these videos were not exactly that same way. The sons in these videos could not take their fathers. And there was a point being proven somehow, some way. Some point was being proven.
I was gonna say, in that first video, it sounded like maybe his son was either chesting up or talking smack.
Talking smack on his dad is what the video description said. Basically, like, Dad, I'm gonna whoop your ass. And his dad was like, all right, okay. Let me just take you up on that offer. Which, on the one hand, as like a man, I'm like, I get that. As a dad, also, like, I was the second born son. I chested up to my dad several times, and it didn't turn out well for me many times. But then, like I said, that one time, it never had to turn out, right? It never had to come to fruition. And after that, obviously the respect level between me and my dad shifted for the better. But let's talk about that first video a little bit more in depth. And Alan, you jump in anytime you want. Like, if you watch it with audio on, the audio was indicative of sort of the tension going on right there in that situation. So it did seem like the son had been talking smack, because the dad was basically saying in not nice words, like, you're going to talk, you better back it up. Yeah. Now, my opinion, you guys, this is where I want you to jump in, boys. My opinion is that he went too hard, physically speaking.
Yeah, no, and that was my comment to Sifu Allen too. It's like this could be a cultural thing too because different cultures handle these things
Yes,
differently, right?
I 100% agree with that statement.
Yeah, and the thing is,
Context is needed, like you said.
exactly, and I kind of felt the same way. It's like you don't have to you don't have to go all out, right? It's like like I think my dad would agree now, because I have a different relationship with my father,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the thing is,
Mm-hmm.
I never got a chance to really chest up to my father and and actually come away in a positive way. My dad kicked my ass until I was like now, right? And so he if I if I try to do it now, I can't take any you know I can't be proud of it. My dad's 74, 75. He's silver gray hair. He's at open heart surgery,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's like I can't. It's like there's no point,
Yeah,
right?
what's the point? Exactly.
I mean, like, yeah. But if like in his prime, could I have taken him? No. I'll just be honest with that. I couldn't take him in my prime,
Mm-hmm.
in his prime either, right?
Yeah.
But would my dad have come off and just kicked my tail like in the video? No, he would have ended it very quickly, which is what he did
Yeah.
whenever I did act up, right? That's why
Yeah.
I said I got off the ground. It's like he never gave me a chance. If I went after him, it's like bam, I was on the ground. He'd take my feet out from me. He'd throw me. Because Goju Ryu karate
Yeah.
is it's a little
Mm-hmm.
bit different than Shotokan or Shitoryu.
Right.
We got a lot of ground game and we got a lot of throwing
It's
in
a
our
lot
style.
like Kempo in that regard. Don't let the people who hate on karate talk smack on our ground game too much.
Oh no, and
We
I
have
think they don't
takedowns and
understand
we
that.
have control.
Absolutely, and I don't think a lot of people know that the difference between Japanese karate and Okinawan karate are completely different.
Well, and
And
Sifu will
so,
tell you short little aside. Sifu will tell you we've also got cool under bottom pressure.
Right.
Oh man. Anyway,
yeah.
no, I think
But yeah, no.
here's my perspective just shortly, and we, I do want to hear what both of you have to say. Is I don't like it when a parent, like I spar with my daughters. They're 8 and 5. They're in my martial arts class. They spar with me, right? But it's like teacher student sparring. I'm not hitting any of the kids hard at all. However, we also don't hit each other in the head. So I would never hit a kid in the head, right? And I don't like it when a parent hits their kid in a way that can hurt them. Obviously, like hitting your kid, it has all kinds of context, but it's baseline not a good thing. But in the setting of a dojo, or clearly some sort of they have boxing gloves, so clearly there's some sort of training happening with this family somehow, right?
Yeah.
But I don't like it when you start giving your kid head trauma, right? Or hitting them so hard in the belly that the Sherlock Holmes movie, you can see that you're rupturing things in there and going to be bruises the next day. I don't like that. I feel like there's different ways to go about a sound ass whooping without actually hurting the kid.
No, I agree. And that's the thing is I hate it, and I've seen this in martial arts a lot where somebody has got something to prove, right? And they end up using their skills in order to do that.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
that's the thing that I even with my own even with my own dojo, right, I keep an eye out for, because right, martial arts is not for that reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if it has even if maybe that person deserves it, right? You don't use it for that reason.
Yeah.
So I completely agree. I mean, and listeners, if you understand, it's we don't condone any sort of abuse or you know or violence or anything.
Sure,
It's just,
sure.
it's not in our way, right? I mean, yeah, our fathers. I mean, I'm just talking in general about the kids that have fathers that are martial arts, right? They're not gonna use it because they know how much
Yeah,
the techniques
that's
hurt,
right. The
right?
average mom or dad who teaches their kids martial arts is not sidekicking their kids for being late to
No,
school or something like that. You know what I mean?
because that's the equivalent of a sensei going to a brand new beginner and just literally beat the crap out of
All
him.
right,
That's
let's
not
go. Yeah. Strap
yeah
on the gloves. Let's see what you can do.
yeah. I mean that that's not conducive to why we learn martial arts, right? I mean,
Right.
granted, yeah, martial means war, right? And it's like the techniques we learn, granted there are many different techniques that are for training. There are many techniques that are for life or death situations. There's things that a lot of people clown that, oh, there's a lot of techniques in martial arts that don't work. Yeah, I'll be honest, there's a lot of techniques that don't work, but there's a lot of techniques that do work, and trying to use those techniques to show off or to prove something, especially against your kid, right? I don't condone that either.
Yeah.
There's more constructive, and there's more ways to teach your kids, right? In a more constructive way using martial arts rather than
Sure.
just beating on them. Yeah, so no, I agree.
I have a
Like I
kid.
said,
Sorry. Go ahead.
no, go.
I was just gonna say in my MMA class, I have one kid. He's like 13, I think, and maybe a little younger. Um, but he's like 200 pounds, and he is devious as far as like the way that he like treats some of the other students. Like when I've never really turned around. I have 20 eyes in the back of my head because I'm a teacher. But when I turn around and he'll like sock another kid in the gut when,
Oh,
and I'm like, I can see you, like I'll stop the whole class. But he's also the
oh,
kind of kid like he'll try and hit the instructors really hard until he realizes like, oh crap, that's right. Like they're better than me. They're stronger. They're all these things. But I've never had to like hit him hard. You know what I mean? It's always
yeah,
like I block his shots and he hits a wall. And then I proceed to touch him up with like 6 or 7 shots. You know what I mean? Light shots because the kid's a wimp. Most people like this son in this video who talk smack are actually wimps. And you can see it in the son. As soon as his dad starts manning up to him, he's like a total wuss. And that's not good either. I mean, the dad's probably trying to beat that wuss out of him a little bit, and I don't know that that's necessarily good, but I think that's probably the general. He's trying to beat the bully out of him and the wimp out of him, right? Because a lot of bullies are wimps, and I think that with this kid in my class, that's generally the issue. He's a bully because he's been bullied and is actually a wimp about it, and so when I block his shots and things like that, then I'll take him down and I'm, 20 pounds lighter than him and I control him. Or he'll get me down and then I'll sweep him and get on top, right? And I'll,
yeah.
little shots to the belly, things like that. Like, get up, get up. I feel like that I don't need to hurt him. Now, if I felt like I was in danger, would I would still I don't know, I'd still be trying not to hurt the kid, right? Like, but I haven't felt like I was in danger. And this dad in this video was not in danger. His son didn't even throw a punch. I think like halfway through he threw like a couple of wimpy little hooks and his dad went right inside and like CTE for sure, you know. I don't know. Sifu, what are some of your thoughts on this video?
So, like I was telling Sensei, there's something about punishment and discipline. There's a difference.
That's a
Um,
good point.
Discipline is specifically meant for you to learn a lesson, to actually repeat said thing. It is your discipline to practice. It is your discipline to make your bed. It is a discipline to do things. So discipline is, um, to me at least, has a good connotation, whereas
Yeah.
punishment does not, because there is something to be said about just like going overboard. Now, I attribute a lot of my martial love for martial arts and everything like that to my mom, but she also beat the hell out of me, right? But there's a I recognized that there was a difference between, you know, doing things to correct yourself or others, and then just doing something to just hurt others.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
do I think
Absolutely.
the father's intentions were good? Yes. Do I agree with how he had to make his point? No,
Yeah, I
because
think we all three are on that same page.
because
Yeah.
there's a thing uh about watching just the body language of it,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
and just
Yeah.
seeing the fact that this kid obviously doesn't want to fight. He doesn't actually want to fight, even though he probably said, "Yeah, well, I'll probably do
Yeah,
that."
right.
According to the thing. So what got me is that there was a crowd of people just watching
Yes. That's
that
what got me
just
too.
That got me too. Yeah.
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 So for me, I was just like, "What are you guys doing? There's no this is not good at all."
I
You
think
know, and
somebody, I don't know what they said. At some point, somebody said something to the dad, and he said something like, F that, this is man stuff.
mhm,
And
right,
on one hand, I understand what he's saying. On the other hand, I don't know what the other person said.
right.
Right?
Well,
He could have
here's
been
the
trying to
big
step in, and the dad shot him down, but that
yeah.
somebody needs to step in.
Right. So the big thing about that is that um, there is no, for me, and this is my opinion, whatever, you know, you actually have to be the person that you want your kid to be.
Yeah.
You have to instill with them in them the thing
Values.
that yeah, well the behaviors that you want
Yes.
out of your kid,
Yep.
they basically do half of what you say if you're lucky, but they'll do 100% of what you do,
Yeah.
Yeah.
no matter what.
That's a really
So
good point.
you want to give discipline to your kid, be the person that you're telling them to be, you know, and you know, it, help them be better. There's no because what all I saw in both of those videos is ego, and
That's
that's it.
exactly what I saw.
Mhm. There's no reason in my, and again, this is my opinion, and this is the result of how I was raised. You know, respect always teaches better than fear.
Mm,
Now, if you
yeah.
can't get respect, it's probably because you messed up somewhere, and you have to use fear. So what these dads are doing seem to be using fear, and actually not just fear, but like um
Intimidation.
yeah,
Yeah.
just intimidation. It's not
Almost like a
if you're
villain.
yeah, if you're trying to toughen your kid up, right? Or whatever it is that those guys want to say is the reason they did that. Um, there are much better ways
Oh yeah.
than putting on some gloves and hey, first of all, good on you for putting on some gloves.
Sure. Yeah.
Second,
Yeah. They could have just sat
secondly,
there and beat their kids up.
secondly, secondly, you don't have to hit your kids so hard that they double over, you know?
Or their
You
head
could
snaps back on their neck.
yeah, and on purpose and keep on going.
And then
Now,
again, yeah.
the first time it happens,
Oops.
and
I'm done.
it's like, hey, you should go back into that. Oh, wait, hold on. This is not actually what I want to do, right?
Yeah,
This is my kid.
I don't think it's like necessarily a bad thing to use sparring as the device if you
Mhm.
have that control, if you know the difference. And I think in the second video, the Instagram video, Hanshi Kovar talks about that. He's like, listen, like, I understand where this dad's come. I'm paraphrasing here. I understand where this dad's
Mhm.
coming from, but he's going too hard. And I
Mhm.
think the first video, I don't necessarily think the dad was enjoying hitting the kid. I just think he started to go down the slope and couldn't really put the brakes on. I think the second video, it looked a little more like the few times, and it was a shorter video, but the few times that dad hit his son hard, it looked a little bit more like he enjoyed it.
Right.
The first dad was using the power as a device incorrectly,
Mm-hmm.
but that's what he was using it for. The second dad was using the power as a release, which is worse in my opinion.
Yeah. The thing is, it's like I hate to say it, growing up here in the States, and then I mean, I played sports, right? I played football, I wrestled, right, in high school. But I think I feel it's a product of, like, I don't know, of, how do you say it? Like, like, of coming up through, like, those programs, because you always got to show off that you're strong, right? You always got to show up, like, especially in football. It's like you never back down, right? You back down, you're a wuss, right? You gotta hit, you gotta tackle, you gotta go claw, whatever you gotta do to keep going. I played defensive line, I played offensive line, right? You know, and it's like, I hate to say it, got really toxic,
Yeah.
And I think you see that in a lot of sports here, right? Where it's kind of takes over that, right? And I think we're raised that way, in a sense, in just general American, like, let's say, organized sports, right? Don't get me wrong, not all programs are like that, but I'm just saying in general, like, that's why you see a lot of these coaches now that are getting busted, right? You see these kids that are getting hurt because they don't know when to stop, right?
Yep.
You know, and so sometimes it carries over. It's like, like, and I hate to say it, culturally, I'm not just talking, like, I'm not talking race culture, I'm talking general culture, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to fisticuffs and, like literally anything that has to do with combat arts, there's that kind of, like, you got to be tough, you got to keep going. It's not, you got to take the hit, you got to give the hit, you got to, there's that kind of mentality, especially now with, the development of, like, MMA, a lot of the, like, just, the general combat sports that are just, like that. Like, I got people, like, sorry, I'm kind of going on tangent, but I got people coming into my dojo saying, hey, like, I want to learn how to fight, right? And I say, hey, if you want to learn how to fight, then just, you need to go down the street, right? So if you want to be a good fighter, you need to go fight with other people that fight, right? This isn't the place to do it, but people are coming into a karate dojo thinking that this is the place to learn how to do that, right? Um, I think the thinking is a little bit different, that kind of contributes to this kind of, I don't want to say attitude, right? But I think both of you guys are right. I mean, like, in regards to, those attitudes that are kind of feeding into kind of how things are. I know a little bit of boxing. I wasn't involved in boxing a lot, but just, there's a lot of things, especially, like, because we grew up in Southern California. There's a lot of Hispanics here. There's a lot of Hispanics that love boxing, right? And you see them, and I work with, well, last year I worked with my full-time aide, and her boyfriend was teaching her kids how to box, right?
Yeah.
But she, even she was telling it would go a little bit too far, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, how would it go too far? It's like, yeah, well, her oldest is, like, kind of like in this situation in the first video, where kid probably pops off something, and then the father comes, okay, well, show me, right? And then prove it. And that kind of
Yeah.
exchange happens, right? And then she explained kind of something similar that happened in her living room, saying, my oldest son popped off, and my boyfriend's like, okay, let me show me what you got, and he popped him one, and then it was over, right? And I'm like, that didn't need to happen.
Yeah, and that's an even. I
So-
mean, I hate to speak on it. I'm not gonna too much. It's a different dynamic when it's not even like the kid's real dad.
Right.
I don't even know if I want to touch that, to be honest with you, because
it's
that's
hard.
That's sensitive.
Yeah, but the thing, it happens more often than not. Right?
That's what I agree with that, especially.
Yeah.
I don't want to single boxing out, because it's honestly, boxing is one of the activities that I think is one of the best martial arts for discipline, and because
I think so.
boxing gyms, like real true boxing gyms, not like another MMA gym that has some boxers. No,
Yeah.
true boxing gyms. All they do is work. There's no
Yeah.
time for BS in a real boxing gym. It is work all the
No.
time. And if you're not working, you're mopping the floors or you're out the door. Right? Like you're picking up other people's sweat rags or you're working. Right? You're always
Yep.
working in a boxing gym. And so I think it's a phenomenal activity for young people, but young men like who need some direction, need some rigidity, need some discipline, but also need positivity and something that's going to make them
Oh,
feel like they're accomplishing something, right? Something that makes them feel
yeah.
strong and capable and like they can defend themselves or, the people they love, or at least like have the wherewithal to not have to get into it, right?
Yeah.
Which is always the goal. But I think boxing is great, long and short of it. I think also the flip side of that is I see more of this type of video, more of this type of situation happen in a boxing gym than any other type of martial arts gym.
But you know, funny. You know what's funny though? I just thought of it right now. It's like a few years ago there was a video about this amateur boxer that would go on and challenge a bunch of people, and then he would just
Charlie
cheap shot.
Zelenov?
Is that what his name is?
Yeah,
He just cheap shot everybody he got to, and eventually the boxing, I guess
I think
the
it's Charlie
arena or whatever.
Zelenov.
But all the real boxers that got together, hey, we need to get this guy back, right? And they challenged, they brought him in, they just didn't let up, right? It's
Yeah.
like so they actually went after the bully, right? To say, hey, boxing's not like that.
Well, and I think
So
like if I was one of these dads and my son was popping off like that, you can't do it in the street. You can't do it in your living room or your computer room or whatever the hell that second video was where the kid's crashing into freaking bookshelves and stuff where he can fall onto concrete. Like imagine if that first dad had hit his son so hard that he fell and hit his head on the concrete.
right, yeah,
Okay. Well, what lesson did you just teach him? That he's dead? Right? So
yeah,
it needs to happen at a gym.
yep,
If this is the way it has to happen, right? If there's 100% this father and son have to box to make whatever lesson needs to be learned, then they need to do it in front of a actual coach, a real person who's actually concerned about both of their safety, and they need to have done it after signing a sheet of paper that says nobody else is liable for their stupidity. And then the father needs to not beat the living piss out of his son. He needs to just tap him up, tap him up, tap him up. Are you done yet? Are you done yet? We could do this all day, because that's the point that I would be proving to my son is if you feel you can take me, then you've got to take me all day long. And I'm going to just pepper you and pepper you until you can't. You cry for your mommy,
oh
right?
man. I mean, I don't disagree with it because like now that I'm older and I see, I kind of hate to put it this way, but what I my traumatization going through how my father raised me, right?
Yeah,
But that's all he did. I mean, like I wasn't joking. I go after him, and then
yeah.
he knew. He literally said, he finished it as quick as he started it. I was on the ground,
You
right?
turn the stove up to 10, he turns it back down
Yeah,
to 2
yeah. And then he'll
quickly.
get up. Let's do it again. Yeah.
But you,
And then
you keep getting up, he's got to keep turning you down, right?
exactly. And I didn't realize that. And that pissed me off to no end when I was younger. I was like, how in the hell is he doing this? Or what am I doing wrong? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not thinking the right things, right? It's like I'm just constantly thinking, what can I do? Like, how can I get him? Because I was so pissed off, right? As a young man, and I hate to
Yeah,
say it, excuse my language, right? And not
yeah,
knowing any better, right? But my father realized that, right? And like he realized, oh man, I got to figure out a way to burn some of this energy off, right? I
yeah,
can't beat the crap out of him. He's not going to learn, right? And so he had all these things going, and looking back at it, it's like, oh damn, it's like, okay, like he didn't have to prove anything to me,
yeah,
right? Everything I tried was ineffective. Number two, I was on the ground, right? I couldn't do anything. And three, you know, it made me get up and start thinking differently, right?
Yeah.
And always, right after everything was done, that was a teaching moment.
Yeah.
There was always a teaching moment and saying, hey, look, I know where you're coming from. I know you're upset, right? I know why you're upset. Let's have a talk, right?
Mm-hmm.
And did you realize that when your head's on fire or you can't think straight, did you realize that you are completely ineffective,
Yeah.
right? And so there was always that teaching moment, and Steve Allen, I bet, learning from your mom, I bet there's a lot of those light bulb moments that your mom taught you same
Hmm.
way, right?
Oh, sure.
And yeah, but I think that's another big difference. You sit there and you berate your kids, say, "Hey, you're weak. You can't, step it up." I don't think that's conducive to develop, like what Alan was saying, conducive to how you want to raise your child.
Well, they're going to see themselves exactly as you present
Yeah,
it, like he said,
and then
right?
and then what's going to happen is you're going to create this perpetual cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's based off of aggression. It's based off of, right, basically, having to be stronger, or having to prove that you're stronger than somebody else, right? And I don't think that's conducive to the art, right? Or in this
Yeah.
case, it's not conducive to the boxing. I mean, good boxers, like you said, good boxers box, and when they box, dude, you throw a jab, they're coming underneath, right?
Yeah.
They know technique, they know footwork, they know. I mean, you're
They're ahead
talking,
of you.
exactly.
They're ahead of you.
You're
All
like,
they focus on is 4 things and 2 feet. Like it's
oh man,
just all they focus on. And
yeah,
yeah, you can't. Well, and to that point, Kay, maybe that's what these dads should do is put them in, because I've seen other videos that you've probably seen as well, where the dad brings their son to the boxing gym and says, all right, then box this guy,
yeah. Hmm.
which is
And then
fine with me. I think that's a
yeah,
good tactic as long as that guy's not going to kill your kid.
and the
Right.
teaching moment is, hey, son, when you're done, right? You pick him off the ground and say, hey, let's
And you
do
shake
this
hands
together.
with that guy
Yeah,
and you thank him for not killing you.
exactly. Because that
And
is
we were
exactly,
grateful.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, that is exactly how I started at my dojo, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
my dad took me. He says, you know what? Here's your new sensei, right? And which is my dad's my dad's colleague, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And my dad's like, okay. He told him basically, he basically told my sensei, okay, you kick the crap out of him now,
Yeah.
right? But he's like, this is your new sensei. This is how you're gonna learn, right? And this is and then that's just that you take them there afterwards, right? Like you get schooled. I had an opportunity to now go to my father and say, hey, I got schooled. Why, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then now you have another teaching, a teaching opportunity for your son or your daughter, right? Say, hey, look, maybe try this time, right? Or try this, right? Or did you ever think about this? Like,
Yeah. Now
and so no, go.
this happens not just between fathers and sons. I've seen this happen, thankfully not like any teachers that I have taught under or anything, but I have seen it happen secondhand. Unfortunately, once or twice I've seen it firsthand, and it got stopped when I saw it. But I've seen this happen between instructors and just kids in their class, where I'm sure both of you guys have as well. That's really troubling to me. Almost more. I don't want to put like a weight on it, but almost more troubling than when I see a father, because look, I mean, it's not my kid, right? So with your kid comes a certain amount of solidarity that I can't step in front of. That's just the truth. However, with somebody else's kid, that doesn't exist. You can't just like call them into the middle and start beating them up in the dojo. And it happens a lot. I feel like it happens in MMA gyms, jiu-jitsu gyms a lot with teenagers who get a little mouthy, and all of a sudden they're fighting for breath, in a chokehold, or, they're getting rocked by somebody with 4-ounce gloves on. So I don't know. What do you guys, what do we do about that? Do we do anything
See
about
that?
that? What do we do about that?
Uh, Alan might have a different take on it, but yeah, but he actually no, he might actually have a similar take on it. Like when in the Eastern kind of right, you kind of build a family right at the dojo, right? It's like the people that stick around, the ones that train under a while, right? And they like I was sharing a couple episodes about my senior. We've been training together for close to 30 years, right? But around you, right, your instructors, everybody. So like you build a network inside your school that you trust. I mean, my father did that. That was his legacy, right? I mean, you know, him and my sensei now, they trained back from the 60s, right? And then they incorporated other instructors that kind of fit the same profile, right? And then you kind of farm your student off to this because like not like I think if you guys have heard me talk about like the one biggest flaw, and I think Western style martial arts is that there's a lot of cookie cutter schools, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Where
mm-hmm.
and I'm not even talking like McDojo. I'm just saying cookie cutter where they try to make every student the same way, right?
Almost
You got to do
franchise. Some of them are
yeah,
franchise, but almost the curriculum in and of itself is like a franchise.
yeah. You say you got to do your roundhouse this way, you got to do your front kick this way, you got to punch this way,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
But
Like
in the
state testing, you
Okinawa,
meet these requirements. You
exactly.
are a perfect black belt.
See, in the Okinawan system, it's a little bit different, right? And even when the dojo system is a little bit different, right? The dojo, you don't go out looking for students to pull into your dojo. Students actually come looking for you in Okinawa, right? And so, like in Japan, it's different. You have a class. That's why, in Japan, they call kyoshitsu or like schools, right? Right?
Yeah,
Dojos in
Sakura
Okinawa, they don't.
mentioned briefly something about this, just how the culture is so different. The way that like you don't like pay a lot for like everybody just takes martial arts class and it's affordable for everyone and it's just an
Yeah.
activity that
So,
everybody does.
and but in Okinawa, you actually, you seek out your sensei, right? And it's like that you pay. It's like
Old school.
that's why. Oh yeah, very old school, right? And so like it's a little bit different mentality, right? And so um, I think the difference is that in the Okinawan style, or even like even just within my immediate karate family, right? They kind of shovel you off to the sensei that can benefit you the most,
Mm.
right? So my father shoveled me off to my sensei, right now, right? And then I told you my karate. I'm a small man karate, right? My sensei is like 5 foot nothing, right? But I'm 6 feet, right? So body types are different, techniques are different. He's very circular. I'm very, like it's like I can stand and I can actually, like I'm a more enforcer type, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so and there's a lot of things that he couldn't teach me, so he would shuffle me off to my other sensei, who's from Okinawa, who's he's solid as oak, right? He kicks you, man, it hurts. Right? He punches
Mm-hmm.
you, it
Mm-hmm.
hurts. He blocks you, it hurts, right? I mean,
Right.
so he knew that I needed somebody to be able to stand up. So like the senseis are not only understanding what you're capable of doing, but you also what who in the dojo fits your archetype, right?
Mm.
So I think there's a little bit difference there because like at that point I think there's a level of trust that the senseis have within each other. I mean, and of course, I'm talking about my own dojo,
Yeah.
but from the other dojos that I've seen, it's gone. But I've also experienced other schools where they're very not so like that, right?
Well, if I
Where
understand what you're saying correctly, let me just you tell me if I'm wrong here. You're kind of saying that like these schools avoid having to the instructors even thinking about having to do things like that because they have the wherewithal to set people up with the correct training partners to make the training itself in conducive to not like getting into like these battles basically.
yeah,
And because of that the word culture comes up. Like in martial arts the word culture, like, or school culture or dojo culture, like it's a big concept, really
yeah,
important concept. In other words, you could have Cobra Kai or you could have Miyagi Do, right? Like that's the culture difference.
yeah,
And
absolutely,
Miyagi Do would be like what you're describing, where you're formulating trust between training partners, between the instructor and the students. There's all these like little webs of trust being weaved. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And because of that, that web is there as a support mechanism. It's not, there's no, the holes in the web are not holes to fall through. You know what I mean? Whereas when you go in and train, and Alan, you sparred with us at the MMA gym. Like, there are a few people who throw down. We saw somebody get hurt pretty hard that night.
Mm-hmm.
But the majority of the people are not like that. So there's a culture there that, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not 100% proud of. The fact that some people decide that during their fight camps that they need to like really go hard. Like, that's exactly the opposite time to go hard. But whatever. Their fight camps, not mine. But
Right.
there is that, like, okay, this person recognizes that like I'm older, they're not gonna go as hard with me, but like when they go with somebody their age, they might go a little. That's a little different too. That's sort of like what Kay's saying, like a little bit of a trust situation going on. So I don't know. Why don't you speak a little bit to that issue that we're talking about? Kay's got the web of trust sort of concept. What are your sort of Avengers platitudes for instructors who feel the need to flex on their students or send in an enforcer student to beat the crap out of a white belt or whatever the case is?
Well, first off, there, what is the culture you're looking for in your school?
Yeah.
And, you know, much like I said about dads and sons, or, uh, they'll do 100% of what you do and only maybe 50% of what you say. So really, it's that. If you are having to get an enforcer student or having to do that, you didn't do a good enough job in the beginning of the training to establish, the type of culture that you actually want.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if you do have a school where the culture is a little bit more like, okay, everybody step up, then you brought that upon yourself. You brought a class action lawsuit upon yourself. Because it's it, it it it's all ego,
Yeah.
all of it. Whether it's, doesn't matter if it's your student, your child, whatever, it's all ego. If you are willing to hit somebody hard to quote unquote make a point,
Yeah.
then you've lost whatever credibility you had in trying to make that point.
100%.
I feel, unless that point is, I want you to quit, or I want you to sue me, or
I want
you
you to be
know,
terrified of
yeah,
my shadow. Yeah.
right, yeah. So
Which,
a
by
lot
the way,
of
if
a
you're a
lot of
dad, I'm sorry, that should not be your goal.
right
Far be it
again,
from me to tell other people
it's,
how to father their children, but that should not be your
yeah,
goal.
but
No, I
respect
agree
and
with that.
fear, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the difference between respect and fear, right? And every human being on earth wants three things, right? uh they want acceptance, appreciation, and acknowledgement, right? So everybody wants to be noticed. It doesn't matter who they are. You want certain people to notice you.
Yeah.
You want people to appreciate you, and you want people to acknowledge your successes, and be there for you if you mess up, right?
Yeah.
So approval, acceptance, appreciation. That those are the actual words. Everybody wants approval. Everybody wants acceptance. Everybody wants appreciation.
Yeah.
So if, as a parent or as a teacher, and much like what the word sensei means, the word sifu means teaching father.
I was hoping you were going to
Some
bring this up.
it basically, you actually have to show up as the paragon or the example of what your lineage or your discipline, your martial art is supposed to be.
Well, you're in
So,
essence, you're a father to all the students who come into
right, because they
the
are the
gym.
next
Yeah.
generation of your lineage. So, if you have to do that, if that is your way of doing stuff, I get it. Maybe that's the way you train.
Hmm.
But if you're doing it and getting the results you want, hey, you know what? You've succeeded.
Yeah.
But I assure you, there's better ways, and a lot of times it, I find that that's sort of training is a lot as discouraging as good training is. Martial arts are a lot more discouraging than encouraging
Yeah.
because you do have to lock in, you do have to train, you do have to practice and, push yourself through a transformational process. Well, if you do that and somebody's not ready to transform, they're not ready to pick up what you're putting down, you've lost them,
Yeah.
probably for life.
Yeah.
And much to the detriment of your school and your
Or your
lineage and
family.
everything like that, and your
Yep.
family, yeah. So
Yeah.
Absolutely.
basically my point is, there are better ways to instill certain aspects. Now, I'm all for letting students fail.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
you can fail all day long as you get back up and you try again and try a
Oh my
different way and
gosh,
everything like
yes.
that. But, you know, do you have to hammer it home with a, liver shot? Probably not.
Right.
I remember back in my day. Um, so I was learning, it was probably the first couple months of my official training. Um, my teacher told me hey, you have to put your hand here to protect your floating rib, and make sure that you're doing this technique like this. And then uh, I did it and I forgot to put my hand there to protect my floating rib, and he kicked me in my floating rib. But he did it without hurting me.
Right.
He basically grazed my uniform, and I went, "Oh, that explains why you
Yes.
told me
Yes.
that." And then I
Yep.
never stopped blocking my floating rib after that
Yeah.
because that was the thing.
Well, I
He
mentioned
didn't hit me hard. I didn't double over. He just basically tapped me with the top of his foot, faster than I could see, and I was like, "Aha,
yeah.
thank you, sir." And
Well, I
then we
mentioned
moved
when I
on.
spar with kids, I don't hit them in the head, but
Mhm.
I absolutely my famous line is I'm gonna give you a nice soft high five in the face, right? Because
Mhm.
that like all I'm doing is I just reach out with my palm and I just tap your little forehead, or I just tap your little hairdo, or I just tap your little ear, or I just tap your little nose. And your parents are watching me. They signed a paper that said I could do that, right?
Mhm.
However, I absolutely am not going to slap you, right? Like a,
Mhm.
a nice little gentle high five to the face, but you're going to get one, right? Like, so
Yeah.
yeah, there's like a balance there, right? Like your teacher, I'm going to kick you.
Oh,
It's not going to hurt, but I'm going to do it. And I'm,
Mhm.
I'm like super honest with students too about that kind of stuff. Like, I think, especially the younger kids, like they love that crap, dude. You like
Mhm.
quote unquote punch, like obviously light as a feather, but you punch like a 6-year-old boy in the belly, like nothing makes him happier for the next 5 minutes. He's like all piss and vinegar for the next 5 minutes, right?
Mhm.
Even little girls, man. In my MMA class, like some of those younger girls, like you take them down and start wrestling with them, and they're just like little cannonballs at you.
Mhm.
So I think a little physicality is great for teaching. Obviously we're martial
oh,
arts teachers, right? Like
Absolutely.
oh,
that's our game.
absolutely. And don't get me wrong when I say this, right? Because I believe in it. Pain is a good teacher,
Oh
right? But
yeah,
I'm not saying inflict pain to the point where it's like,
not
like you saw like
injury,
some of these videos, right? No,
not
not
injury
injury.
or bruising or
But
Right.
cuts.
Right.
yeah, but the
And,
funny thing is,
and
just like Alan, right? It's like I
Mhm.
got humbled early because before I learned karate, my dad sent me off to my uncle in Kendall, right? And
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing more humbling than my uncle, right, telling me, "Hey, I'm gonna hit you in the arm." Boom.
Smacking you with a
Oh, I'm
wooden
gonna hit you.
sword.
Yeah, and then I was like, next thing, I'm gonna hit you in the head. Boom.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. Right, that's the
Right.
humbling piece, right? And I'm like, how do? And then of course, and I think this is where I think that's why a lot of the my experience is that there's always been a teachable opportunity, right? So you would get your tail kicked, and then at the end of the day, they'd be like, "Hey, you want to learn how to block that, or you want to learn how to avoid that?"
Yeah, yeah,
Right? And
yeah.
just
Mm-hmm.
like Alan Sensei, right? Hey, put your hand here so you don't get kicked in the floating rib, right?
Mm-hmm.
And your hand's not there, you get kicked in the floating rib. Like, oh, okay, right?
Lesson of the
So,
day. Fair warning,
but
though, right? Fair warning.
exactly, and so those kind of things, I think really, I think they really stay with kids, right? That's why, like, when you say, "Hey, I'm gonna give you a high five," I'm gonna give you a high five in the face, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's you're giving them opportunities. Hey, it's coming, right? What can you do? What are you gonna do to avoid this, right? Or
Well, then it becomes a game too, right? And
yeah, exactly.
even though it may be serious, or maybe they were stepping out of line, or talking, or even hurting someone, or trying to hurt, right? You can still make a positive experience or even a game out of the situation. Like, all right, well, then I'm gonna tap you more times than you can tap me. Like, that's one of my favorites. Or like with this bigger kid in my class, like one of my favorite things to do is prove that I can out wrestle him. And I'm not a wrestler, but I can out wrestle him. And that's what I do. When he starts acting up, I just control him or don't let him get me. It's just, but I think some of these dads, they have this mindset, because I get it too, where you're my kid. Nobody knows better what to do than I do. And to a large extent, that's true. But some of these dads clearly don't have the proper training themselves to
I was gonna mention that. So,
dial it back, right? Like that, the
yeah,
dad in that first video, clearly he's a good boxer. That doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean he's a good teacher of anything.
Right.
yeah. No, I mean that's huge because like we talk about control, right? Like how control is relative to who you train with. We talk about, right? Like you just said, just because you're a good athlete doesn't mean you're going to be a good coach, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, there's a big difference, like some of the best athletes I know, like, right, they don't have it in them, right? They don't have, it's like
Yeah.
they can do it, but they can't teach it,
In
right?
my opinion,
Right.
the best fatherly thing to do, and again, this is my opinion as a dad, though, would be to now take that kid to the right coach, right? Like, recognize that if I get my hands on you, I'm going to go too far. So let me take you to this guy, because he's going to be just as mean, but he's not going to hurt you.
See,
So,
that's and that's what they do in Japan because number two, right? The whole thing about learning from father to son, right? Throughout the course of history, they realized that number two usually is not as good as number one, right? And so they usually shuffle their sons off to another teacher, right? Usually somebody which is that way, they say, hey, look, it's like this is somebody that I've worked with. This is who you're gonna go learn from, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can see like generational, like generational martial, like martial artists, especially in Okinawa, right? You can see that oh, this one stuck with his grandfather, right? And number two, father's not as good. Grandfather was great. Father's not as great, but grandson is awesome because grandson learned from somebody else, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a lot of these talks about, I have a couple of the Goju schools in mind already, but most of these guys, like, the funny, you talking about Cobra Kai earlier, right? They're talking about, like, the writers that did Cobra Kai did some research because, like what Miyagi knew and what Danielson is teaching is, the Miyagi-Do students, right, is not really Goju, right? There's some
Mm-hmm.
Goju aspects, right? And I think, the funny thing is, I think the Karate Nerd talked about this. I think Jesse talked about this too. But some of the stuff that you're seeing is like from another teacher, which is connected. And it's funny because they actually use pictures of real senseis, in Chosen Dojo, right? In
Okay.
Okinawa, and so, they they it was kind of one of those things like, huh, it's like maybe that was true. Like, like because Miyagi's father taught him and Sato, right? They
Right.
they have a completely different style, right? And now I don't know, how's that in Kung Fu? I mean, is it pretty similar, or that's
Well, so and this might be, you know, completely wrong because of uh of well, the Chinese version of Hollywood. But like to everyone's best recollection, like most of the stuff that exists today in schools that are being taught uh, always came back to the third time the Shaolin Temple burned down, basically. And then the monks basically scattered around China, right? And if it wasn't like for Wong Fei Hung and the Boxers' Rebellion, that a lot of this stuff would have been lost, and
yeah,
a lot of this stuff wouldn't have been accessible. And then there's another guy who they also made movies about, named Hua Wongjia, which is also played by Jet Li in
yeah,
Fearless,
yeah,
basically who created the Jinwu Federation, who basically said, "Hey, everybody that did kung fu, here's a safe place to play. Here's a safe place to share your ideas and not have to get into, you know, death matches over whose style is better."
yeah,
So a lot of stuff happened there. And then of course you have, the emperors and then the cultural rebellion and all that stuff. So in kung fu, like if you can trace your lineage back to the monks that left Shaolin the third time they burned it down, um, then you have a pretty established lineage. Now, there are, the legends of how this style was made and how this style was made and how this monk just watched, a specific animal and then he got enlightened as to how, to move his body to do this thing. Whatever. I wasn't there. I won't tell you you're wrong, but somebody taught that person how to learn. Somebody taught that person how to be, how to stand, how to do all this stuff, and it got stress tested, and then over generations, it became the martial art that you're doing right now. So that's kind of where it is. And every time somebody says, "Hey, I've invented a new martial art," I'm always like, "Yeah, based on what?" Because
right, right,
a
right,
lot of
yeah,
a lot of stuff is an amalgam of other styles.
Yeah.
And yeah, that might be a new martial art coined, but it has roots in something.
Sure.
It has
Yeah.
roots in other stuff. So like using uh for the Chinese, there's a lot of not like ancestor worship really, but like, hey, my teacher was this and blah blah blah, and they learned from this guy. But a lot of those guys just never met those teachers, right? And though it's cool to have that, like, hey, grandfather's teacher and my father's father learned from blah blah blah. That's all well and good, but what can you do is what
yeah.
it comes down to.
Mm.
What are you? How are you
Which is
living, and
true.
how
Yeah,
how is that going? Are you living up to the principles those people put down, or are you
yeah,
forging your own path?
Mm.
Either way is okay, but let's be clear as to what your aims are and what your goals are, because like anybody can pick up a book nowadays or watch YouTube nowadays and be a faux expert at anything, right?
oh,
Because
yep,
Self
they've
awareness, though, very important. Yeah.
yeah,
right, and that's what I mean though, is like if you're actually going to teach somebody a lesson, and actually do what you're trying to do is like, this is my goal is to teach this specific lesson. A lot of times you fail the first time.
Mm.
A lot of
Mm-hmm.
times you might not fail completely, but you could have probably done it better. And until you do it over and over and over again, you have not perfected it or really gotten your point across. Like I found myself a lot of times 10 years after my teacher says something, go, oh, that's what he meant.
Oh my gosh,
I
so
get it.
many times.
Oh, oh, the light
Yeah.
bulb moment.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. And you feel
And
so sorry, you feel so stupid sometimes when these happen, man.
right.
Super dumb
Right.
Yeah.
sometimes.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh,
But it's just funny that all three of us have had that moment. It's like, and it's like, literally, it's like, oh my goodness, that's what he was talking about back then.
I think
Yeah.
anybody who's done
Right.
well martial arts, but any sort of like we say this all the time, any art, right? If you've done it for let's just
Mm-hmm.
say some years, like you're gonna
Mm-hmm.
start having those moments.
Oh
One of
yeah.
my adult students, he did martial arts because his son started, and he
Mm-hmm.
started in his 30s, and he's been doing it now. Gosh, probably 15 years almost, and um, 8 years, 9 years into his training, he's already a first degree black belt, and
Mm-hmm.
he's helping me teach class one night, and I'm teaching hook kicks, which, for anybody who doesn't know, it's a relatively simple kick, but slightly more advanced. And he never had the greatest hook kick ever. And then one night I said to like the class, I was like, well, it's a side kick first and then it hooks back. So just throw a normal side kick and hook it back. And from the front of from next to me in the front of the room, he looks at me and he goes, holy crap. And he throws a near perfect hook kick. And he's like, damn it, that's what I've been missing this whole time. And I was like, dude, I've said that to you before. He's like, I know, but it never made sense until like just now it made. I literally watched him have that light bulb moment in front of other students too. Like, man, how cool
Oh
was
yeah.
that though? Because all the rest of the like they were throwing like amazing kicks that whole night because he had that moment. So Alan, that's a prudent point you bring up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have the same thing with my students because there's a running joke now whenever I teach anybody any applications that whatever I do is a movement called dragon holds a ball. And for those of you that don't know what it is, imagine you have a steering wheel in your hand and you're turning to the right. And then imagine the steering wheel turning to the left. That's it. That's the whole thing. That's dragon holds a ball. So
Actually, we have the same
ev-
technique.
yeah, everybody.
We call it Tiger
Every
holds
single
ball, but that's because we're Iron
yeah,
Tiger.
every single martial art does a variation of it.
Yes,
Sometimes
yes.
their hands are closer, sometimes their hands are further apart, sometimes it's their arm moving, sometimes blah blah blah, whatever. And so every time I teach certain martial arts and stuff, I'm just like, okay, then you do this, and then it looks like this. Okay, if he punches, it looks like this. If they kick, it looks like this. It's the same move, right? And they're like, yeah, yeah. I was like, which move is it? And they're like, dragon holds a ball again. I'm like, yes, absolutely. And they're like, why can't I see that? Why can't I just see that it's the
Because you
same
need
move?
more
And then
practice, Grasshopper. You need
because you
more
haven't done
practice.
it enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's it. You haven't
Yeah.
done it enough, and people haven't done anything to you for you to figure it out. Thankfully, you have me, who has had many students have to like try to figure it out, and I've had that experience to
Yeah.
be able to translate to you. And in 10 years' time, guess what? You'll figure it out too. And so that's kind of what one of the things, right? Is like whatever lesson you're trying to teach has to be done like with discipline, which means done over and over and
Yeah.
over again to actually do that. So
Or to recognize
when
that you're not the person to translate this lesson, right? To bring them, like Kay said, bring them to a
correct,
new sensei.
right, that's the thing is like, and so the thing my teacher said to me was that a good teacher will tell you the same thing 108 different ways,
Uh-huh.
and
Until you
and
figured
then
it out, they'll figure out a new way to tell you.
right, exactly, and that it was the and he called it like that's your job as a teacher is to teach how to do whatever technique it is.
Hmm.
Horse stance,
I
you
have this
know,
joke with
explain
some of
horse stance
my
at 108 different ways.
older coworkers. We had this joke
Hmm.
that like on like we our dialect is not like, I grew up just south of Philadelphia in the state of Delaware, and we have a very specific accent, but like we joke that our accent or our dialect was not Delaware accent, it was martial arts teacher metaphors, because there's some, like, you have 20 students in class, you might come up with 20 metaphors for one technique, just like you're saying, 108 ways to just, like, okay, so in baseball, when you're throwing a reverse punch, right? Like, in baseball, when you swing the bat, you turn your hips and you turn your feet, right? That's called a shift. We do that same thing when we throw a river, right? But like, somebody might not care about baseball. Okay, so you ever play tennis, right? Like, so you just keep going down the line. Okay, you play piano, so when you strike that key and you're right, like, whatever helps you explain it, I'm going to come up with a metaphor, and it might not even work. Sometimes, like, I'm halfway into the metaphor, and I go, you know what? Disregard that. Let's think of it this way. That's what it's for. And I think, to bring it a little full circle, because I do want to get into our other topic, we're right at the halfway mark here. I think these fathers in general, parents in general, teachers, you need to put the reps in too. I think that's what you're getting at. You need to put the reps in on the subject of teaching discipline or teaching the lessons that you want to teach. And it starts before the boxing gloves ever have to be put on your hands to punch your son in the face for the stupid decisions. Because your son, I was a son, we were all sons, we make stupid decisions as we grow up. And I'm not done making stupid decisions. Ask my wife. So it's one of those things where, like you're saying, you have to put those reps in from the moment your kid is born, like steering them in the direction you want them to go. And you can't do everything for them. My daughter at 8 years old is so much more mature than I think I was at 8 years old. I can't make her mind up on certain things, and I shouldn't be trying, right? Like, that's her job. My job is to help guide her along the way so that her mind makes what we all feel are at least safe decisions, right? Like, your decisions are your decisions, but safe, right? And she learns that by, like you say, example, right? Example. They love candy. My kids have a sweet tooth. They just do. But it's not because I give them 20 candy bars after dinner. It's probably because I don't. Right? And then when they get that candy bar, it's like, oh my gosh, this is so damn good. It's like, but,
Yeah.
if I gave you 20 a night, you'd be just, where's my next Milky Way, Dad? Right?
All right.
So you put in the reps. You teach them to eat the good food, no matter what, and then you get something you like. Same thing is true. You want to talk smack, then you're going to put in some work. We're going to get you some discipline, and then you can figure out if you still want to talk smack, right? And back it up. But the fathers, I think in general, I think they don't put in the repetition that they need. I think they don't think about how it was when they were. It's easy to forget that, 10, 20, 30 years ago, you were that same age. You were talking to your dad that way, or your mom, or your teacher, your coach.
Right, but it's up to us as more enlightened individuals, or trying to get to more enlightened individuality, to rise above what childhood trauma that we have in order to actually facilitate quicker and more effective enlightenment for the next generation.
Now, I will say, if we're talking about an instructor and an adult student, or a fighter sort of a relation, it's a different conversation. We're not having the same conversation. So I think this whole hour has strictly been about an adult and a minor, 9 times out of 10 familiar relationship. But I think that's really, like, when it comes to the safety of two adults, It's a little bit of a different conversation. You know what I mean? Like a black belt being challenged by an adult white belt or something to some that still happens. These instructors have to protect themselves. It's a different conversation, I think.
I half agree with you. It comes back to again establishing
Sure. Yes. Yes.
establishing the relationship
Sure.
in the beginning.
Yeah.
Because
but I think
again,
it veers, right? Like we're not really having the same talk. We're having an adjacent talk in that case.
Exactly. And a lot of times, what I imagine if I was on the dad's side in that first video is that his son decided that he was an adult and was trying to do adult things.
Yes.
And he was treating him like he would any other adult.
Yes.
And still not the way I would go about teaching him that lesson, but I understand how he got to that point.
Everything is nuance. Touchy subjects like this, everything is nuance, and I think you're describing that appropriately.
Yeah. So if it's a complete stranger or blah, 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 this is how I would treat him. I get that. I understand. And, but I still don't agree. You know what I mean? So
you still got to establish from the get-go that this is not the way we do things around here.
Yeah. And even if that was the thing, are you teaching, you're teaching everybody else around you, including, your progeny, that, hey, this is how we take care of things.
Yeah.
And when in fact, it's not the best way to take care of things, because now you have, so in a lot of our self-defense, we talk about different codes, like different codes of awareness. So like code white is completely oblivious, just walking about life, tripping over flat ground, right? Then code yellow is like, okay, there's something on the back of my neck, I can feel something's off. Code orange is kind of like, hey, I put in the time, I can take care of myself. I know where to avoid stuff and which way to go and try to keep myself the safest I can. Code red is, oh crap, my plan didn't work, I'm in it, But after that is code black, which is the aftermath. What are the legal ramifications of the things you just did? What are the, what is going to be coming in the aftermath of that? So a lot of the things that I've found to be useful are not like the killing shots or anything like that. It's more like, okay, we're ending the fight without having to, further maim or, possibly unalive somebody, because that's not my job. If I was a Marine overseas or a Navy SEAL overseas, that would be my job.
That's your job.
But that is not my job. That's not my job. My job is like, oh crap, I didn't get to my car without trying to get mugged.
I had a teacher. Okay. I actually called him Sifu too, but he described what you're describing as dragon moments, because in our ethos, or in our karate ethos, at least at our dojo, like the dragon is the wisest, right? Like you aspire to become like the dragon, and in these dragon moments, basically what you're saying, like, do I need to go that extra step to where like I actually restomp the groin, to use a Master Ken term, or like I actually send my knee through their nose into the back of their skull? Like, do I need to do that in this moment, or can I choose something else? And sometimes, yes, the answer is like, the danger is so severe, I need to do a severe, right? But he describes like those little tiny, sometimes it's just a millionth of a second. Sometimes it's 2 whole Mississippis, right? Where you have this moment where you have a choice and you're looking to make the dragon's choice, the wisest choice, which may be maiming, but 9 times out of 10, you're looking for a better option. And he's built these into all of our techniques. So like you might have a 12 move sequence, for somebody throws a punch at you and you do 12 freaking techniques back to them.
Right.
He's like, but there's 3 or 4 other moments in there where you could have stopped.
Right.
That's your dragon
Right.
moments.
I was about to say that. I was like, there is a point of, excessive violence.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's where it switches from self-defense to aggravated assault. And and I learned this past weekend. And Kay, I don't know if you know this in the state that you live in, but in California,
Were you out here?
No, I was in Virginia, but
Oh,
I learned something from a friend of ours from California. But it's basically like in a knife fight in California, like you get one. You can stab or slash at somebody once, but anything after that, if you get into an actual knife fight, anything after that, because of the nature of how knives work, it's, excessive because it's no longer self-defense.
Yeah.
Because you don't know which, technique, which stab or slash was the one to take out the guy or girl that attacked.
Interesting.
So it's literally like you can stand behind self-defense on one slash, but if it's like 3 or 4, congratulations, you're now excessive violence. You're now an aggravated assault because that first slash may have been the only thing that would have been a thing. So
very interesting.
Basically, moral lesson is don't get into a knife fight in California if you don't have a real good lawyer. But
that actually in California it applies to firearms too.
One shot.
Yeah. One shot, and you got to you can't just walk out. You can't just walk out your front yard because the dog's barking and shoot the dog either. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
Well, it's not exactly that way in Ohio, but I live in Ohio, and it's pretty. Let's just say, don't be uninvited on my property.
Exactly.
Because they don't put they don't put a cap on the number of bullets I can shoot at you or times I can stab you.
Yeah. Well, but that's what I mean. That was like every state is different. Every situation is different. But you have to, acknowledge the fact that there is legal ramifications after the fact. Because we live in a society where we kind of live with other people.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
And we want to live with them harmoniously.
Well,
I gotta.
Before we transition, I kind of want to tie this conversation into saber fighting, right?
Yes. Yes.
And I kind of want to get your thoughts on this. So early on, when we started, right? Like a lot of people would comment, say, "Hey, why are you holding back?" Right? Mm-hmm. And this is early on, especially the ones that that had training, had skill, right? And we had a lot of fighters that come out and say, "Oh, you're not giving me any respect if you're holding back." I'm like, "Hey, hold on, that's not what we're trying to do, right?" And so, I don't know. I've been out of the game for a while, but I keep hearing talk about that. It's like, why are you holding back, or you need to go out full out on me? And this guy has no training, right? And so I think. The flip side too, I think people need to understand, especially in our saber world, that hey, look, it's like you got to watch what you're asking for. Number one, right, and number two, it's that's not conducive to how you get better, right? And
absolutely
so
not.
I kind of want to throw that out there because it's like it's kind of the opposite side, but I keep hearing that it's like well, you're disrespecting me if you're not going full out on me. Wait, time out, right?
I don't know if
I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts.
I don't know if it was George St. Pierre. I want to say it was George St. Pierre, but I'm probably wrong. It was sort of a veteran fighter like that. And I think what he was describing was like there's this term, hard sparring, which especially like, again, with fight camps and people who actually have professional fights coming up, the idea is that you're basically not using control. I don't like that definition. To me, hard sparring means like physically difficult. You want to throw up. They're not letting you stop, but they're not hitting you hard because you have a fight coming up and you need all the brain capacity you can muster. That whatever. That's between you and your training partners and your coach, right? But hard sparring is a thing. And with lightsabers and sword fighting and stuff like that, it's not just like, I don't think it's a good thing necessarily with fists and feet, but it's not just your body. This is a weapon. It hits harder, it hits faster, it's more dangerous. And what this fighter had said is because of these elements, faster, more intense, more dangerous, all these things, you're getting ready to fight, but you're not training. Basically, you're firing such a different set of synapses, you're not getting better. You're not improving, you're not practicing. All you're doing is surviving. You're defending yourself. You're caught up in the moment of violence, so to speak, or fighting. You're not practicing to fight. You're not training techniques for this situation that might arise in the fight. You're just hitting each other. And that's, like you said, that doesn't make you better. Well, in my opinion, it actually has a deleterious effect. In other words, you get worse. Because if you're talking about actual physical power, you're getting, like, your brain can't hold up to that. You can't hit each other in the head hard repeatedly. You just can't. Your brain has a finite number of times that can happen. And as a martial artist, going into spar, knowing you're going to get hit in the head, even with a lightsaber where you've got a fencing helmet on and that thing can take a whole lot of force, you're still deleting fractions of brain cells every time that happens. That's why we practice blocking, right? Like,
See, what scares me though is that you have untrained fighters that don't understand that.
well, I don't know how to, like,
Yeah.
you have
And
untrained teachers in charge and nobody's.
yeah,
We live in a free country, so to speak, right? Like, I can't go to Joe Blow Saber teacher and tell his students, like, this guy doesn't know anything, because what do I know, right? Like,
yeah,
I mean, I know what I know, but they don't.
yeah.
And it doesn't matter. Like, I can't stop if he's not hurting anybody. Now, this is where your question, I think, comes in. What if he's hurting people? Or what if people are getting hurt? You know? Because we've seen, even with San Diego Saber, they had tons of control back in the day even. But we saw plenty of their fighters broken thumbs, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's a tough question. Alan, do you have thoughts too?
Well, on the note of, you're disrespecting me by holding back.
Mm-hmm.
The correct answer is I'm showing you much more respect by holding back.
By restraint,
Yeah, if the only way you can show respect is by swinging for the fences, then we need to redefine what the word respect means.
Well, and you don't have to hold back your techniques. You just hold them back intensity, basically.
Right, and that's what I mean. It's like, let's talk about what you mean by respect, because especially in the lightsaber world, the lightsaber sports and going through, different rule sets and stuff like that. It's like each rule set actually shows a different form of respect. It doesn't matter which one it is. There's a different way of looking at each.
I never thought about this.
Yeah, so a lot of the rule sets are showing you how the person that wrote those rules saw the fight in their mind happen. And then it's up to you to kind of interpret that and hopefully express it in the correct way. And if you take offense to somebody else fighting you, then again, you are not in this for the same reason.
absolutely.
Because if you felt it was disrespectful for me holding back, then were you angry that you won? Were you mad because you lost? I don't understand where you feel offended. And if you did, hey, maybe we have a better talk about it, and we can talk about maybe what rule set might work better for your temperament, or maybe this is not for you because that's not how we roll. So well, yeah, so a lot of that sort of attitude and stuff like that tends to work itself out. And because usually in a lot of organizations, the person that's saying that is not the person running the organization or
That's another good point.
the group.
It's usually just
And
somebody you're sparring with.
yeah, and usually it's somebody that is that might not even be part of the organization you're visiting. It might be just some rando off the street. So
Another good point.
yeah, a lot of it is like, okay, what are you actually looking for? Let's again manage expectations here. My expectation is XYZ. Is that the same as your expectation? Because if not, then we're not in it for the same reason.
Yeah.
Much like we talked about, sparring night versus fighting night. There is a difference.
Yes, there
you know,
is.
and in temperament and intention and all that stuff. So really I would ask what their intention would be.
Yeah.
Because I've met plenty of people that are like, well, if I'm not, trying my hardest and blah blah, I feel like it's disrespectful. I'd ask them why. Like, well, why do you feel it's disrespectful to be able to try to work on a specific technique over and over again and stress test that one technique? Why do you feel that's disrespectful?
Yeah.
Why is it disrespectful for somebody who's trying to get something that they might be weak on, trying to get it strong against you?
Yeah.
Because maybe they respect you as a fighter, and maybe they respect you as a person trying to work on it, and actually asking you in this conversation that we're having with Marshall glow sticks, that what's happening here. So yeah, a lot of that stuff works itself out, but when it really doesn't, it's never it's never about what they're asking about. It's always something else.
It's interesting.
No,
Go ahead, Kay.
I get that too. No, I get that too. It scares me though. I think that was the biggest thing about you know basically in the combat aspect of it,
Mm.
that you get all these people that they're looking at this as a sport. They're looking at this as you know like I know different organizations don't look at it as a martial art, but it really is a martial art.
Hmm.
And they look at it as like, well, but they don't have the like there is like we're starting now, we're still on the ground floor, but schools are popping up, people are starting to learn. But
Hmm.
the guys that don't have the discipline to go and actually take classes or learn, right? They get like when they get offended, I'm like, wait, hey, hold time out, man. It's like
Right.
it's like I agree. It's like what are your intentions? What do you want to be? You want to be the best lightsaber fighter? You want to you want to take the championship? What do you want to
They
do?
just want to be there for
Right.
Fight Club. I mean, this is my opinion, and I'm kind of being facetious too. Like I understand that, but they're just there they're not there for the right reasons. So again, opinion based, right? What are the right reasons? Well, for me, that it's not to go in and do Fight Club. First of all, you don't talk about Fight Club. Second of all, you just I don't randomly select sparring partners. So on Wednesday nights when we spar, or Saturday mornings, I don't often go, but when that happens, I don't just randomly pick people to spar with. I pick you because you have something that I want to work against or want to work on or for, whatever. There's some aspect about the way that you move and train or whatever that I'm working with. And if that changes in the moment, then I'm logging that information, right? Like if it turns out that you're becoming a jerk over the course of that time that I'm trying to work with you, then I'm logging that information. I'm saving that for later, for the next time I try and maybe go tap gloves with you, right?
The infamous mental database.
Yes. And the other side of that is I'm doing it even when I'm not sparring with you. And if I'm not selecting you for a spar, you might not care, and that's fine with me. But if I'm not selecting you for a sparring partner and you're wondering, well, how come you don't go with me? Or when I'm going with you, I'm not going that hard. I'm just kind of blocking and evading and letting you swing hard or whatever. And you're wondering, like, how come you're holding? Well, if you have to ask, that's your answer. Like, I'm holding back because you're not. Like, because you're going like a bat out of hell, I have to defend myself. So I'm not going to I'm not going to try and like attack you because you're too busy doing that already. If you have something I want to work on and it turns out that you're just being a jerk, then I'm going to go back to somebody else. It's so much easier. I've come to that point in my training. I think a lot of it is these people don't have that point, that they have no training, so they have no maturity in their training. They have no sense of, well, I don't need to do that. I don't need to do that to become a lightsaber fighter. If you don't actually have any training and it's just a bunch of you getting together, I'm proud of you for taking that step to get together, but somebody needs to be the adult in the room. Somebody needs to figure out how to take this group of miscreant students and be a teacher. That might just be telling them, hey, we only go 50% here.
Yeah. And fighters out there, don't get me wrong, man. I mean, there's some people out there that I know personally that are just naturally talented, right?
Right.
But I guess my 2 cents on that is that you're naturally talented. Just think how much further you can go with some direction,
Well, you can be talented. You can practice techniques without hitting people hard or without, I don't know, man. Like Matthew Dominguez, we watched the Sparbecue, the San Diego Sabres Sparbecue a few weeks ago, and there were a number of matches where Alan had beginner students and Matthew as well had beginner students in the tournament sparring against, and we talked about this at length in the episode, sparring against more experienced, like Matthew, like Alan, like Sloan, like Jonathan, people who are just more experienced and very good.
Yep.
And those more experienced, very good people were not holding back technique. They were still trying to score on these beginner people. It's not like they weren't trying to win the match, but they also weren't like using their Form 7 Vapid combination. You know what I mean? They weren't like Gemso beating the blade across the room and then, following up with 6 or 7. It just, there's a thermometer and they're playing with the mercury, temperature gets hot, temperature gets cool, temperature in the middle, nice sunny 70-degree day. Like an experienced person, that should be part of your training, is how to gauge like that. And you do that by training with people of various experience levels, in my opinion.
No. And I think you're right. And, let me use let me use Sakura as an example, right? Why she's so good, right? And it's funny because it's not actually contact, right? She has a pocketbook of the forms that she knows, that she can use, right? And she knows her opponent. So she knows when she gets in her bracket, she knows who she's going up against. And she knows what those people have in their pocketbook in regards to what forms that what they bring to the table, right? So she's not going to go full out, knowing, depending on knowing her competition, right? So, a good competitor is going to be able to gauge, right, what they need to bring to the table.
Yes.
Right? You see, let's go back to fighters, right? Like, let's say go back to boxers, right? I mean, you've seen fighters outbox other fighters that that might have raw power and skill. I mean, look at Manny Pacquiao in his freaking prime, man. I mean, yeah, he was a hard hitting, but as he got older, he would outbox people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Heck, even the Golden Boy, right? He would outbox, right? People, right? And so, hey, look, I got skill over raw power, right? I mean,
he's talking about Oscar De La Hoya for anybody who's not sure.
Yes. Oh, sorry.
I don't know. It's fine.
Yeah.
He hasn't been a boxer in quite some time, so I don't know if we're kind of dating ourselves.
I guess I just dated myself because I love watching Oscar back in the day.
Phenomenal.
But he was a great boxer.
Was he not the youngest Olympic gold medalist in boxing? at
I
the
don't know.
time.
We'd
He
have
was
to go
very
look
young.
at
I want to
tape.
say he
Yeah.
was like
Yeah.
17, 18, 19 or something like that. Anyway,
But the point I was trying to make is that good fighters gauge their opponents, right? And then they feel them out, and then they, and Al, I could, Alan, I want to hear your take on this too. But in karate, they say you got to match their chi level or the ki level, right? Good fights always end up having that, equal kind of level, right? And then they adjust from there depending on their opponent.
just
And I'm
enough
not trying
extra
to
or
talk like
just enough
mystical.
under. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm not talking mystical powers. I'm just taking, like literally
Literal
like what you're
energy.
bringing to
Yeah.
the ring, right? What you're in. Yeah, and good fights are usually between opponents that have very similar levels, right? And they know
Yes.
how to turn it on and turn it off.
Yes.
And so,
The greatest
that's
MMA
the one
fights
thing
of
I
all
kind of
time.
want.
Dustin Poirier
Oh
and
man,
Justin Gaethje comes to mind, right? Like just some of these George St. Pierre and Matt Hughes. I mean, some of
that was a good. That was a great fight, actually.
phenomenal stuff. Anyway, your point is well
But
made.
yeah,
But I think about this too, and saber fighting in particular. A lot of this is tournament based, which means
yeah,
you're going to be fighting more than once that day.
yep.
And you're probably not. They're probably not going to get easier as the day goes on. So, do you want to blow your wad in your first round?
And I think that's where, especially where saber fighting is and competition is now. You see the good fight. The good fighters actually do kind of adjust. Like
Yes.
the people you listed off at SDS. I mean, Allen as well. They know how to adjust.
Unlock the
accordingly,
techniques as needed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's why I wanted to see if you guys ever had that, that thing, because like you're asking for things like this, like the father and the son to happen, right? If you're asking, hey, don't hold off, don't hold out on, it's like then it just becomes a clubbing fight, and that's not fun.
I've never
So,
had
I
it
just wanted
happen
throw
to
that out.
me in saber
Yeah.
settings. I've had it happen many times in kickboxing and MMA. In which case, I have the very similar either talk with the person or it gets physical to the point where I stop the situation, and then
Right.
it becomes. I've even said to people like, I'm not going with you. I can't go with you. We're done. We're in a different mood. And I think a lot of times they realize they messed up. You know what I mean? Like a sane human being, if somebody they respect, because I feel like generally, even though I'm kind of like the old guy in the room, I generally have the respect of the other people in the room to where like they know like I go 60 to 70% and that's it. You're not going to get 100% from me unless you really made me mad, right? And you're going to get one of those and then we're done. But like a lot of times, especially with the younger guys, there's that sense of looking up to me. And if I'm mad at you because of the way that this sparring round is going and I stop and I won't finish the round with you, they're usually like the puppy that got his nose swatted, It's like, oh man, like I didn't mean to like hurt Mark. You know what I mean? Like that's not the guy that I wanted to hurt tonight. Like he's a nice guy. I didn't mean to, and I am like I'm a nice guy to people. Like I spar with you because I want to be with you. I want to hang out with you, and I'm punching you in the face not because I hate you, but because I love you. And it's like that's me in the sparring room. So when I have stopped rounds with people, I have sensed that puppy sense of like, oh crap, like, man, I was being a jerk. I'm sorry, and they come up and they apologize, and generally it's good after that.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
But I've never had it happen in saber. Alan, have you had that happen in saber fighting? Uh-oh. Did you hear my question? We lose you, Alan? Excuse me. Uh-oh. We might have lost Alan. He might have stepped out, visited the little Venables room. Well, Kay.
Yeah, no, but yeah, sorry for the interjection.
No. I think we beat this topic like that dad beat his son. I mean, we needed to. This is what this series is all about. This is what Sojido is all about. Like we're
Yeah.
talking about something like it's an uncomfortable topic. However, I'm sure you do too. I see these types of things pop up on my feed way more than I wish they would.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
And in all martial arts, and not just like dads with boxing gloves on. It's all martial arts in all situations. But
Yeah, the ones that hurt the most is when you see them in organized dojos,
yeah.
right? It's like that should never happen in a dojo or a dojang or any sort of martial arts school. I'm like, oh, what the heck?
So this is pretty much a one topic Sojido tonight, which is fine. But let me just since we talked lightsabers a little, so a little bit of Star Wars, but we'll just totally wrap it up with a short Star Wars question, and
All right.
you could go as in depth as you want, or you could be super glossy. The Force, is it
Yep.
magic? Is it science? Or is it something else?
Oh, that's the same question I get when we talk about what's it called? Your chi or your ki, right? Chinese call it chi, but Japanese call it ki.
Sure.
And everybody when we start talking about it, everybody thinks it's some sort of mystical
And
force.
we Americans call it vibes. Your vibes.
There you go, vibes.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So
But,
what are your thoughts?
it's the thing is the way I look at it from a Star Wars perspective, right? And that there's something bigger, right? The Force is bigger than I think you might agree the Force is bigger than
Sure.
either side, right?
Yeah.
And they it's like they kind of leave it up to the people, the watchers or the readers to kind of understand. um and it's interesting because what Eastern martial arts, they talk about these different flows of energy, this different things that but we talk about it for traditional martial arts, right? They talk about having to be able to pull that energy from the ground, right? And then transferring that energy to basically input from the ground and output through either your feet or your hands,
Yeah.
right? So I think there's a nice correlation between in real life, and in actual real traditional training to that of what the mystical force in you know like in Star Wars, right? It's Yeah, but the whole thing, it's like people have their different things, the whole metachlorian thing, right? That they're small little beings, or all the different things that they talk about. But I like to look at it that it is something that's it's an energy that's again like a vibe, like energy that you can draw on, in the Star Wars universe, right? And I'd like to think that everybody could tap into it, but of course, in canon or even legends, right? It's, there's some people are more sensitive to it than
Sure.
others,
Yes.
so yeah. But it's it comparing it to like I said in real life. I mean, it's like I never would have been able to understand the flow of chi, because everybody's like, oh, that's so fake, right? I'm like, no, not really. I mean, in the beginning I thought, what the heck is this thing? What are they talking about?
Yeah.
But once you start learning how to utilize and being able to generate power in short bursts, or being able to generate the same kind of power utilizing your body function, your muscles, or depending on different techniques in small areas, large areas, right? Centrifugal force. There's a lot of different things. Like people talk about being able to use your hips to generate power, but they think about twisting your hips to use power, but they've completely forgotten about how being able to use power, hips from your power, like a fishing rod, right? The forward and back motion, right? You can actually generate power that way. So there's and that's the power that we're talking about, because you got to have stable feet on the ground, right? To be able to draw that, to be able to draw that, they say drawing power from the ground. But you know, but learning how those techniques and how to be able to pull that to transfer it into basically kinetic energy, right? So Yeah, so I like to think, from a martial artist, I like to think that there's a little bit of that in, you know, in how the Force works in Star Wars
You
too.
said anybody can access it to a varied degree. To me, that implies a little more science. You know what I mean? A little
I think
more
so.
biology, if you will. Uh,
Yeah.
but like with magical effects, because
Yeah,
magic
no,
is
no.
one of those. Even in like the real world,
Yeah.
like magic is whatever you think it is, right? Like,
Yeah.
but in
It,
in the conventional sense of the word, it's trickery. It's not
yeah.
real. It's like using science or physics to trick people into believing something, or that something has changed or been disappeared or whatever the case is. But magic, the greater sense of the word, is like that feeling you get when you wake up on Christmas morning, right?
Yeah.
That feeling you get when your mom says you did a great job. That's
Yeah.
magic too, in a way, but
Yeah. No, I agree.
that's not really science.
Yeah.
Although I'm sure there's
And
scientific things going on. I don't know. I
no,
just
no, no. I think you're on something because there is aspects of like like dead weight. How do you explain dead weight,
mm,
right?
mm,
Like my teacher in Japan has a way of, like he's a small guy, right? So you could kind of pick him up light as a feather, but he does, he knows how to manipulate his dead weight where you try to pick him up, and even a 6'4", 250 pound, like I'm talking retired cop try to pick him up, and my sensei just, he, manipulated his weight and he knocked him back by,
yeah.
right? And that to some people that's like mystical, magical, right? But there is a scientific aspect of it.
Yes.
There's, and so, understanding how your body mechanics work, if you don't understand it, it could appear that way. But if you in real life, it is scientific because when you actually punch, you're using your bicep and your tricep at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's body mechanics, right? And that's also science. That's science. It's
all,
biology.
all martial artists are just amateur physicists, guys. You heard it here first.
Oh, no, no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
We do. I try to explain these types of things to students sometimes. Like as I'm throwing this punch, we talked about like the baseball analogy and whatever.
Yeah,
It's it is a lot of times like you're trying to describe these really technical, scientific, physics type, biological type, biomechanical concepts, but you're not a scientist, right?
yep,
Like you're trying to use poor man's words for everything, and um, I think that's kind of like that makes magic in a sense, right? Like the ability to take something that is scientific, that is physical and semantic,
yeah,
and be able to translate it through art, which is not by definition scientific at all. And then it becomes like magic because, like you said, all of a sudden, like you're harnessing this type of power that you, and we're not saying not power like magic power, but sort of magical sense of getting more powerful, getting faster, getting more athletic, more endurance, whatever. Brain discipline, the mental discipline that it takes to go to class twice a week over time creates a sense of power within you that becomes like a magic trick. Like I'm not that confident walking in the inner city by myself, but I can put on the magic trick of a little bit of confidence, right? So as not to seem like a prey animal, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um, in a
No,
sense,
it's
that's kind of the way I'm thinking of what you're saying.
yeah, no, it's you gotta be comfortable with what you know, what you've learned, right? And you gotta understand what you've learned, right, in order to be able to apply it, right? So, and I think that's the same thing, if you like, like the Jedi when they're training, right? Or even the Sith when they're training,
Mastery of the force, in a sense.
it, in a sense, yeah. I mean, and even within the Jedi Order, right? I mean, you had people that were, that were more adept to physical movement using the flow of the force rather than using the force itself, right?
Yeah.
And so there's different aspects of that as well, right? In martial arts, there are people that know how to use their knowledge more than the actual physical sense, right? So they have more of the knowledge of being able to, again, teachers and the ones that can actually, actually fight, right? Fighters and teachers, right? They're just different.
Yeah.
There's different categories or different, venues of which way martial arts can go. So, that's why I think, like in Chinese arts, right? That's why they do their, the hand and the fist, right? It's a scholar and the warrior coming together. Right?
Yeah, we do that same thing in Kempo.
Yeah. So
Sifu, you got a thought on this? Magic, science, or something else?
oh,
I,
maybe something's wrong with his mic. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious.
Yeah.
It sounds like we got a bear snoring on the on Alan's microphone there.
Could be.
Alan, if you're like shouting at us and trying to say something, I apologize. we don't know it. And Smafcasters, don't slay the bear. It's just Alan. So it's actually really hilarious. Okay, I think with the snoring Alan bear, this is the perfect spot to wrap this episode up. It has been a very interesting night here on Smafcast.
Yeah.
Very
Let me
interesting
tell you,
night.
man, you guys been hitting deep topics lately. I've been listening to the other episodes you guys been releasing.
Ooh,
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We hit a deep one a few episodes ago for sure.
Yeah.
We do have some more lighthearted episodes coming up soon here. We've got the commentary from our light fencing seminar. We've got commentary from the San Diego Sparbecue. We've got a very special episode with Sakura. And by the time everybody's hearing this, these will have already been released. So go back and listen to those if you have not already. Go back and listen to the other Sojido episodes, Sojido 2 and Sojido 3, or 1 rather. And any of the other episodes that Kay has been on. Kay, I know that I think it's episode 9. You've mentioned to me several times that you're having trouble playing it. I was not before. Now all of a sudden I am. So I got to go see if in the annals of my computer I have the original copy of that and upload that, because that is still one of our most popular episodes. And
Okay.
so I want to see if we can get that one back up. But if you have stuck with us for this long, first of all, thank you. Second of all, share it with a friend. Third of all, visit all the places. SaberMartialArts.life. You can get in contact with Kay through there if you need to. He's also on all the social medias, but go to our website, look up SoCal Saber Academy on our schools list, and that's where you will find ways to get in contact with Kay. Ask him all the questions you want. Maybe go learn some karate or some saber fighting from one of the schools he's affiliated with. It'd be super cool.
Or heck, send your questions to Alan or to the cast, man. I mean,
hey,
nice
it could be could be on the next Sojido for all you know.
There you go.
Please do. Please reach out to us, SaberMartialArts.life. I'm Saber MA Outreach at gmail.com. Master Venable at PhoenixSaber.com. And, of course, we're on Patreon now. We're on Instagram. We're on YouTube. All the stuff. Go check us out. There's no reason not to. And, of course, bring your own saber. And for Alan, this party's over.
Must have been really tired.
Dude, I think he fell asleep. I think he's snoring.